My name is Lisara, and now I will try to answer the question from Ma'am Anita, subject psycholinguistic. Number 1 is, what is the second language acquisition? The answer is, second language acquisition happens when a child or adult has already become competent at a language and then attempts to learn another. Is learning a second language after a first language is already established many times. This happens when a child who speaks a language other than English goes to school for the first time. Number 2 is, what is language acquisition? The answer is, language acquisition is the process by which humans acquire the capacity to perceive and comprehend language. In other words, gain the ability to be aware of language and to understand it, as well as to produce and use words and sentences to communicate. Human language capacity is represented in the brain. Number 3. What are differences, acquisition, and learning? The answer is, acquisition of a language requires meaningful communication in the language, which is also called natural communication. Learning of a language is based upon less communication and more explanation of grammar rules. During acquisition, a child is not aware of grammar rules and intuitively learns what is right or wrong, as there is constant meaningful communication. Acquisition is caption squeeze, while learning is conscious and deliberate. From the explanation above, it can be concluded that the differences between learning and acquisition is the term acquisition is used to refer to picking up a second language through exposure, whereas the term language learning is used to refer to conscious study of a second language. Number 4 is, what are the second language acquisition barriers? The answer is, barriers to language acquisition and learning. For number 1 is social. There is peer groups, socioeconomic status, L1 education and literacy, parental or family support, access and support. And then number 2 is psycho or emotional. There are affective factors, self-belief, motivation, attitude and towards language and learning, and then social disposition or character. And number 3 is biological. There are psychomotor skills, cognitive functioning, L1 development or childhood development factors, and number 4 physical impairments, and then psychological fitness, and then age and health. Number 4 is pedagogical. There are type and method of instruction, improved materials and curriculum, little access to input, and then school and classroom culture, lack of learning skills, strategies, teachers and student relationship, planning and use of time. Number 5 is cultural. There are language transfer and interference, and then cultural values regarding risks and taking offense, and then government policy and investment, dislocation, movement, and war.
For number 5, when is the best age to learn second language? The answer is, according to the researcher, that the truth is the researchers aren't able to agree on an age. What researchers can agree on is that it is easier for children to learn language than adults. A study done by neurology professor at UCLA, Dr. Paul Thompson, and his team found out the brain system in charge of language learning have accelerated growth from 10 years old. And the other study was done at MIT, and it concluded that the most optional time to learn a new language and achieve native fluency was by age 10. So it means that the age of 10 years old, an adult can learn second language, because at that age, children are better able to absorb information and learn language well. But although children will continue to learn rapidly after age 10, it is unlikely that they will become fluent in a new language. This is because they have a smaller time frame before their learning abilities start to weaken around age 18. Comparing to those who try to pick up the same skills before 10. From that statement, we can conclude that older children and adults often have less time and motivation to study second language. Means that as we get older, we will find it difficult to have time to learn a second language due a lack of motivation within us and diminishing curiosity. And number 6, what is considered proficient in second language? And the answer is language proficiency is a measurement of how well an individual has mastered a language. Proficiency is measured in terms of receptive and expressive language skills, syntax, vocabulary, semantics, and other areas that demonstrate language abilities. There are 4 dominants to language proficiency. The first is reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Language proficiency is measured for an individual by each language, such that the individual may be proficient in English and not proficient in other language. Next, for number 7, what is the ultimate goal in acquiring a second language and how does this affect that age is that taught? And the answer is the ultimate goal acquiring a second language is determine the ability of the second language learner and try to test his ability to the target language through speaking and writing. At the age of 6 until 30 years, there is a critical process in which a learner can master a second language quickly. Then several of other researchers reflected that universal grammar is no longer accessible at the age of teenagers but can be accessed again after reaching adulthood. Thus, it's easier for adults to master a second language.
How an adult amnesia acquired a second language? The answer is amnesia is losing their long-term memory, but their short-term memory and their ability to speak and understand are entirely unimpaired. So they are able to acquire second language as well as normal people. Uh, 9. How does mother tongue affect second language acquisition? The answer is a new study is exploring how a person's native language can influence the way the brain processes auditory words in a second language. Because that signal, that beginning and ending of the words can differ from language to language. A person's native language can provide misleading information when learning to segment a second language into words. Annie Tremblay, an assistant professor at the University of Kansas, is trying to better understand the kinds of cues second language learner listen for when recognizing words in continuous speech. She also is studying how adaptive adult learners are in acquiring these new speech cues. 10. Is there a meta analysis on predictor of second language acquisition or bilingual language acquisition? The answer is a meta-analysis of selected student of a meta-analysis of selected studies on bilingual education was conducted to and result will be compared. Meta-analysis used to participate in bilingual education program consistently yield small to moderate differences uh, and total achievement when testing in English, writing, science or social studies, listening comprehension, and attitude toward school or self when testing in another language. Thank you.